Hello again. This is video number 3 of the marking gauge build along project, and yesterday we did video number 2 and the article where we created the stem for the gauge, and hopefully you've succeeded in creating the comma for it. There were many ways of we discussed about how to do that, and I mentioned that you could start off on the square, put it in the vise, create a rebate or a saw curve, and then plain round. That's what I did. Alternatively, if you don't have one of these super duper advices from Douglas, then you can simply do the opposite. You put the plane in the vise, and if you've got a leg vise or a record vise or any other vise, you can just simply put that in there, and you can run the wood along that, and it has the same effect, but it's much more controllable because you can obviously shave off small amounts. Obviously be careful that you don't shave anything arterial in the process, but it can be done, and it's if you set the plane fine enough, it's not a difficult job. Once you've done that, you end up with a comma shape which has a fine progression, starting off not taking much off at all, keep taking little bits off, and then eventually you'll go around, and you can see that it is actually quite a smooth curve into the bottom of the rebate. So you start at the top, curve round to the bottom of the rebate, and that's what you should end up with. What you've got to be careful about is making sure that you take the same amount of wood off all the way down. So keep looking at the commas at the both ends that you've marked up, and make sure that you're taking the same amount off, because the last thing you want to do is create a wedge shape. Now today we're doing the head part. That is actually relatively simple compared with the stem. The reason is it's just simply a 5/8 hole in the block. You start off with the block, which you cut from some scrap, and it's 3 by 2 by 1. So I cut 3 by 2 block and then cut an inch off. I suppose I could have used the Ryobi saw, which is this thing. They're available fairly cheaply. I think we've discussed these things over the last couple of weeks, months even. I know Mark down in Costa Rica is enjoying his one, and he's creating an entire kitchen from it. So they are a good investment, a very good investment, and it cuts through this like nobody's business. In fact, it did cut through the box with it. But today I used Shane's masterpiece, the sash saw that's just come out from Skelton Saws plug, and the reason I'm plugging it is entirely because it's brilliant, and it's British, and therefore it's got to be encouraged, but I don't expect you to go to that extreme to cut a bit of wood. So we just want a 1 inch block thickness, but what is important is that the faces are not only parallel, but also that they are square to the hole. If you drilled the hole out, I did it by hand, simply. Let's put the block back in again. I wanted to use the brace. I couldn't find any square taper bits that were 5/8. There was everything but 5/8, so I'm going to have to go and buy one just as a matter of principle. So I used the hand brace again, hand drill again, which is the multi-speed one, this crazy thing, and simply drilled out. It's gone loose on me. Simply drilled out the hole to depth with that. You don't get these in the movies, you know. There you go. And Forstner bit, and the Forstner bits, this was a cheap as chips one from a kit, worked perfectly, as you can hear. In fact, you can drill all the way through it, trying to keep it level as possible. And resulted in a perfectly straight and square hole. And as you can see, the actual hole itself is quite smooth, because the Forstner bit cuts the sides first, and that's what we want to achieve in this. We want quite a smooth side wall on the hole. So once you start with the 5/8 hole and you cut your 1 inch block, it's simply a case of creating that comma. Now I found most of the wood is taken out on one side, the side that is the highest on the kerf that you cut in. I cut the kerf using a coping saw. This happens to be one of the American ones, brilliant new concept thing, easy to use, dovetail blade in it, and it's really something else. It's really controllable. So I put the coping saw in and cut down to the depth that you need, and that gives you a reference marker that you're filing up to, or you're chiseling up to. And that brings us on to how do you remove the rest of the stock, where you can use a gouge and just simply gouge it out. If you're a carver and you're into that sort of thing, the fine bits, like the remaining shelf as it were, I just used one of these tiny little mortise chisels, but you can use anything. And but the best thing that hogged it out, to be honest with you, is the handle rasp that this one is sold by Workshop Heaven, Matthew Platt. It's brilliant, number 3, and it happens to have the same radius as the snail. So that was an easy job, just simply taking it easy, making sure it was level, and you're taking out the same amount either side. Just keep checking. Obviously you mark the spiral on it in the first place. And that was it. Once I got that done, you can just refine it, and you have to take it. I found that it didn't fit, and then it didn't fit, and then it didn't fit, and all of a sudden it fitted. So you know, it's just there. You see now it feels quite loose, but twist locked perfectly well, and click back again. You can hear it locking, and it is really strong. As I say, you can lift, you can pull it, and it shouldn't come off. You're not ever going to do that. You just want to stop it drifting as you're using it. So now we've ended up with the hole cut, the shaft, and the next stage for the next video and the next article will be to well, it's the final stage really. It's deciding on the pin or the blade that we're going to put in here. First of all, I'm going to drill a pilot hole for a small screw, a screw similar to the one that's in here, and try to keep them faithful to the design that I'm copying. But then after that, I will be cutting the one for the boxwood one, which will be a square hole, and it will have a cutter in there, and the cutter will also have a wedge. Now the way traditionally that it's done is quite clever. The hole is cut tapered, and the wedge is a little brass wedge. Oops. There you go. And you've got the cutter, you've got the wedge, and you've got a square hole, if that you can see that. So I found that if we wanted to make it into a cutting gauge, that what you need here is a flat on one side and a curved bevel on the other side. So we'll be doing that, and we will be doing that in the kitchen when my wife goes out, so that I can show you that on a gas hob or a blowtorch or any other heat source, quite relatively low heat source, you can actually create you can actually harden the blade that we're going to use, a little tiny piece of 01 steel. The other thing you can use is a piece of old large bandsaw, that sort of thing. As long as you can create a bevel and it's relatively hard. The harder it is, the less it's going to wear. It's exactly the same as a plane. It's a cutting gauge. This is a marking gauge, so we'll just put a pin in that for now and then grind down that to a point, which is what the original was. But that will be in the next video, and by that stage I hope that you've got your two bits together, and we can move forward and create the final part and test it and try it out. But it's yeah, I'm pleased with that. I'm actually quite pleased that worked, and it is square all around, and that's important. Even at this stage, if it isn't square, let's just say you put your square up against it and it's not square, then that face can just be plain square again, just to make sure all the way round that it is square, and then you've got a nice face up against which you can run your gauge. That's it. There'll be pictures to follow on the article, and if people could just sort of let us know that they're actually making one and how far they're getting, maybe add some of their own photographs to the article, and just give us a clue as to who's actually making one of these. I know there's quite a few people who've come to me and said, what type of wood should I use? What I'm planning to make it with this. Should I do this? Should I do that? So I know there are people out there that are making this. Presumably everybody's waiting to make sure that it works. Well, it does. So now we can get to this stage, we can feel comfortable that it's really just about a decoration now. The other thing I will embellish it with will be, on this particular one, will be just inlaying, using a router, just creating a shelf or a rebate and inlaying a piece of thin brass and sticking that on there. That will give a wear strip, give it a little bit, make it a little bit posher. But you don't have to do that. You know, if you've chosen the right wood here, you've got a gauge there that will last as long as this one, which has got to be at least 150 years, I guess, maybe less. So there we go, video 3. We'll see you again in video 4, and that will be the time when we'll be making it all look pretty. See you again. Bye.